On April 15th in the year 1912, the cruise ship that is famously known as the Titanic sank deep down into the Atlantic Ocean. It was on April 14th that it actually hit the iceberg, but it wasn't until the morning of April 15th that it snapped in half and sunk deep down into the ocean. It is said that there is over 1,496 deaths, but even with this number, it's not finalized because there are still a few people that are being searched for that were said to be on the ship on sailing day. A lot of people think that, it was an iceberg that sunk the Titanic, but I'm actually here to tell you about how the sinking in the Titanic was due to human error and not just an iceberg. But before I get into the facts on human error, I'm going to tell you on how the movie Titanic was incorrect. The reason why I'm going to mention the facts about the movie and how it was incorrect is because a lot of people only really know about the events of the Titanic because of the movie that starred Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. Some of the ways in which the movie was incorrect is the movie depicted third-class passengers to be locked below deck as the ship was sinking. This is actually untrue. No one was locked below deck, no matter what class you were. You were all told to get to the main deck and try and get a lifeboat because there weren't enough lifeboats on board for the amount of people that were on the ship. The water that was shown in the movie as the characters walked through it was also really, really, really clear. The actual water that was in the Atlantic Ocean that would have been in the ship and that was filling the ship that actually sunk would not have been this clear. It was ocean water, so it would have been murky and honestly gross looking. The characters in the movie, Jack and Rose, were also shown to tread through the water for well over an hour with absolutely no issues and no health issues from how cold the water was. According to actual science and scientific facts, it would have taken only about 15 to 30 minutes for them to feel the effects of how cold the water was, and it could have taken about 15 to 30 minutes for them to actually die from the effects of how cold the water was. Now, I'm going to tell you on how human error and not just an iceberg sunk the Titanic. J. Bruce Ismay was someone that helped run White Star Line, which was the cruise line for the Titanic. He actually pressured the ship to keep sailing even after hitting the iceberg. Captain E.J. Smith also sailed the Titanic at a really, really high speed, even with how much of a massive ship it was. It was said that E.J. Smith was trying to do this at a high speed because he was trying to better the crossing time of the sister ship of the Titanic, which was known as the Olympic. Louise Patton, who was a granddaughter of the most senior officer that survived the Titanic, also has said that the ship might have taken a fatal wrong turn. Physicists Donald Olson and Russell Doscher from Texas State University also said that a few months prior to the Titanic setting sail, the moon, sun, and Earth all aligned in a way that put an extra pull on Earth's tides. With this extra pull on Earth's tides, it lined the iceberg where it was in the Atlantic Ocean, which caused the Titanic to hit it where it did. Lee Clark, a disaster expert at Rutgers University, goes into the same fact on how Captain E.J. Smith was sailing the ship too quickly. Lee Clark says that the ship was sailing well too fast in dangerous waters. Even with all these facts on human error, people still say that, the Titanic was caused by an iceberg. It sunk because of an iceberg. But even with an iceberg that put a gaping hole on the side of the Titanic, that wasn't the true reason that the ship snapped in two and sunk. People also say, the movie was right, but facts that were spoken in this presentation shown how the movie was very, very incorrect, and mostly everything that was in the movie was just for show. People also say, the ship sailed 100 years ago, and since it happened over 100 years ago, cruise ships weren't as advanced back then. Even though, obviously, the Titanic did sail over 100 years ago, and it wasn't as advanced back then, this still doesn't give it a proper reason for it to snap and sink the way it did. And then another thing that people say is that it was said to be unsinkable. The Titanic was actually never shown or said to be unsinkable. This was a term that was pegged in the movie. It was also pegged by a Philip Franklin. Philip Franklin was a White Star Line vice president, and because he said this, people said, oh, the ship is unsinkable. But the makers of the Titanic never said it was unsinkable. This was just a term that was brought back up in the movie, and that's another reason why the movie was incorrect. I want to thank you for listening to this presentation, and I want to leave you with this. I want you to go and watch the movie Titanic, with all these facts and think about how human error sunk the Titanic, and think of how incorrect the movie actually is. Thank you.